there's one. Let me check that out. But yeah, feel free to speak or chime in, interrupt me, argue with me, whatever. I'm just going to do my best. It's early. Women who give birth to children suffer to take up life and precious time in their lives. Will this have a positive impact on the body level directly to become Buddha? Well, this is a great question. Or will there be a negative impact on their physical health? Thank you for answering questions for all mothers. I think that's a really beautiful question.
No pressure.
Yeah. First of all, first of all, as a father, I want to say that many fathers also give up a lot of their time and energy to take care of the child. And so I think but women obviously are utter superheroes, and it's completely unbelievable what you go through to give birth. Now, I've seen this a couple times. And the first thing I did the first time I saw someone give birth is I ran to call my mom and thank her and then ask her why she did that once and then did it again, or like how that could be possible. But, I think people have an amazing way to persevere. I like to think that taking care of a child can give you amazing seeds for having a longer life with more energy and more strength. And I've thought a lot about this. And I think there's probably a lot of factors that depend on your motivation and your mentality. But I think that in terms, how there's the three parts of so there's the four parts of a karmic path: Shi, Sampa, Jarwa, Tartuk. And then Sampa is divided into three parts, like the motivation, the understanding of the situation, and your emotion present in your mind. They call it nyomo, but it really just means the feeling you have, because it could be positive. And I think in terms of having a child, the seeds you plant, I guess, are really, really powerful, because partly because the emotion present in your heart while you're taking care of them or raising them is in some way or other really strong. For me, I read a lot of stuff about bodhicitta, and I think that in my own life, I've had tastes and experiences related to that I can relate with what I see in those books personally. But I don't think I ever felt so distinctly clear that I would easily give my life up for someone else until I had a child, until I had my girl. And then it's like, I get that kind of spontaneous feeling. I was like, no, wouldn't even be a question. Like, that's how I felt about it. So I think that level of care for another being is probably contributing to like really powerful seeds. I can also say that I've seen in the moment that being pregnant does take a toll on a woman's body. In the case of my wife, Erin, who you guys know, it did have some effects on her body, but it doesn't have to. I mean, this is all just according to the understanding of karma that we get from, these books and from Geshe Michael. It may or may not have an impact on your body. So I can see that it does. It can. But that can be reversed. I mean, it's all just kind of trying to create the causes to have a long, healthy life. Pregnant or not, all of our bodies are, falling apart. Some of us might have a few years longer. But so I think that for an answer to this kind of question, I like to focus on just like what kind of seeds are we planting, and how do we, what's the power of those? So yeah, I think it's probably a chance to plant really, really, really powerful, positive seeds if you can keep your motivation really high, especially. I was talking to one of the Sarah monks recently who I hadn't talked to in a couple of years, and Jamyang, for those of you who know him, and he's like in Gyumei now studying, which is really exciting. Uh, anyway, I told him I had a kid now, and he was like, "Wow!" He was like, "Yeah, amazing karma to take care of kids," So, and he doesn't just say stuff to Westerners like some people do. He says what he really thinks. Cool. Any more questions? Let's see. Oh, here we go. This looks like a fun one. Does the left hand tradition mean that one needs to develop compassion on an existing basis of wisdom? This might be too complicated for me, but I'm going to try. Or that one develops wisdom on a basis of compassion? I'm trying to understand if there is a link between the name of the tradition and the side channels from yoga. Cool. That's cool. I'll share what I think, what I've heard. Usually, left hand tradition refers to, Vajrayana practice or tantric practice, if you will. And Geshe Michael likes to explain, and he did here the other day explain how left hand, I think that comes from the fact that, or like on one level, it comes from the fact that it's an unclean hand. So it's, and Tantra has its roots in the Indian schools, pre-Buddhist times. And probably you guys know this, but Brahmins are like fastidious, and there's a lot of like ritual purity and cleanliness and emphasis on all of this kind of cleaning before they engage with their spiritual practice. So this idea of the dirt, and in India, the left hand is completely taboo. That's the important thing because of that dirtiness. Nobody touches the left hand with the left hand. When I was in India, I tried to hand a guy money with my left hand one time, just not being mindful. And he was like, he didn't want to touch it. Also, when I was at the hotel, I asked them for toilet paper, and the guys started laughing so hard at me. They were like, "Get a load of this guy," I was like, "What?" Anyway, so anyway, what we're talking about, these kind of practices, the more esoteric, Hindu, and then into Buddhist practices, they're kind of like, part of the practice is to take things that are impure and make it pure, and to change the world, which is impure, into a pure world, and to envision things that way. So it's fitting that it would take up this practice, of the impure, and try to practice making it something pure. How does that relate to the channels of the body? That's a great question. I've thought about this a little bit, and I think that you could say that the left channel is the desire channel, and our desire is generally for impure things in the sense that we are looking for happiness within food or within another person or within money or whatever, and none of these things have happiness inside of them, and in that way they're impure. All of those things are a trap or a trick. So they're all going to run out, they're going to end. So we think happiness is in there, so there's some impurity in there. And then in the practices, maybe there is some attempt to make those things something pure, because we are trying to find happiness. So yeah, maybe the desire of the left-hand channel does relate to the left-hand practices. So is it named after that? I think that maybe it's related, but it's a few thousand years ago. So I don't know. Let's see. Whoa, we got hit with some questions now. Rob, do you know if it's named after that or Cat?
I mean, I don't know. I mean, I always think of it. Can I comment? Is that all right?
Yeah, absolutely. I'd love that.
Yeah, I mean, in an open way, I always think like if it's true that we're sort of all the ways that we're sort of thinking and going about our normal life is wrong, like there's something that we're doing incorrectly. I always think of like ways to create different sort of synapses in the brain,
Yeah.
and so like learning language or travel or taking on like a different job that you're not used to, that they kind of like, because we're, at least for me, because if it's true that I'm doing things incorrectly, and if there's a way to like remap my whole being, then like maybe there's a path of ways that I could try to do that. And so in a way, when I think of like this left-handed path in an open way, I try to use little tricks of the trade in order to trigger different ways about shifting my reality. And so I used to keep my book with my left hand because I'm a righty.
Yeah,
And
same here.
I always played lacrosse, which is they're always like, use the opposite hand, like develop your opposite side. And then so like when I punch in, I have a security code at work, I always do it lefty now. Or when I punch in my code at Starbucks or anything, I always use my left hand to kind of trigger that other way of kind of doing things in an open way, obviously, because there's another version of this. So that's just like one of the little tricks of the trade that I kind of like have incorporated into my life, that I tried to open doors with my left hand or punch in things. I think it's a fun way to get up every day and try to think of a fun way to incorporate into your life different ways of doing things in order for me to understand words class, for example. Like, yeah, that's what I think.
Nice. Thank you.
Yeah, I agree 100%. It's the trigger device, the trick of the trade.
Nice. Thank you. Thanks, guys. Cool. So we all got something practical we can take home. I'm going to work on that today so that I can understand words class too, or whatever class.
Every class.
Yeah. I taught myself to write with my left hand too. I was really excited when I was like, oh wow, I didn't even think this was possible. If the archetype is immutable, then at this point I have created an immutable archetype of the car. One day when I see a new object, I still not know and ask, what is this? The salesman would say, this is a car, an amphibious vehicle. Nice. From that day on, I was able to realize that this was also a car. So did my archetype change at this time? Yeah, it's a good question. It did. And this is kind of just understanding that the archetype can become a new archetype without changing, which, it's a kind of deficiency with language. Like, of course, in some way that seems like a change, but it's more like the point is something that Geshe Michael teaches really well in DCI, right? Like when he talks about something being changing, he talks like, I'll give you an example. The fact that it's night, okay? It's night right now. Let's just pretend it's night. Is it ever more or less night? I mean, sorry, let's put it this way. Is that fact that it's night ever more or less true? No, it's either night or it's either day, right? I can't really say. It's a little bit less true right now. It's kind of either true or it's not. It's either nighttime or daytime. I know this isn't a perfect example because night gradually shifts to day. But at a certain point, you start saying it's the morning. And then at a certain point, you're saying, it's tonight or it's the nighttime. And you can only say one or the other. It's kind of binary. And so in the same way, that's what an archetype is like. Like it's either, it just is the way it is until it isn't that way anymore, in which case it is something else. So it's like I wish I had a PPT slide. It's like an instant change into something else. So you have an archetype for a car, it's like a straight line. And then one day you get a different, like cars change, and then you get a new archetype for a car. So this one stops and then a new one starts, or you can have both. But they're neither archetype is changing. Neither one is getting less car or more car. It doesn't peter out gradually. That's the point. Like a phone, that's a better example, because like for people my age, a phone used to be something completely different than this. It used to be this like thing with round parts or whatever and a curly cord. And that's what phone meant. And if you said phone, it would give me this picture in my mind. And it definitely would not give me this picture. And then the phone, now if you say the word phone, this is exactly what I see. I see a thing with a camera and the contents of the world's knowledge, and good music and all this stuff. And the archetype didn't gradually go from one thing to the other. It just, there was just a series of different archetypes. So it's very binary. I hope that makes sense. It stops being one thing and then you get a new one rather than it changing over time. And the best way to kind of understand is the difference between like a sloping graph or a curve on a graph and just like a line and then another line. So for me, that's clear because I studied calculus in college. Maybe that's a little less clear for everybody. Anyway, if anybody has a follow-up question on that, feel free to ask. That's, I think, the best I can explain it right now. Dear teacher, it's in the DCI level 7 manual, so you can look it up in there. Under Geshe Michael's explanation of subtle and gross impermanence. What we see are all pictures opening, such as in the park. There are a lot of people, things. My question is each object a seed open image projection, or one seed opening makes the whole picture? That's cool. It seems like this should be like one of the 14 unanswerable questions or something. Like I can only answer some kind of Zen koan about this. I don't know. It is your vision. I think you can probably look at it either way. I think when you try to pick it apart on that level, the seed metaphor will break down. But I think this is my best attempt, and anybody can share what they think. While you're perceiving the whole picture of the park, that's one seed. And Mind Only School would say that seed also includes you and your perception. So the one seed is splitting into the perceiver and the objects that it's perceiving. So it's all of it. One seed is everything. But you could also say that, the rock came from one particular karma and the kids playing came from other karmas. But at the end of the day, like you find, which I think is true, like if you're having a somewhat pleasant experience, but part of it is bad because there's a bird pooping on you or whatever. Like you could say that all came from different karmas that you've planted over the years. But at some point, I think the karma breaks down, right? I mean, this kind of metaphor, because, or this way of understanding it, because if I think that, okay, so if one person's coming from me, that's one seed. I mean, if one person's coming from one seed and then the grass is coming from another seed, okay, well, then is the person's left hand coming from one seed and the person's right hand is coming from a different seed? You know, is the person's finger coming from one seed and then this finger is coming from a different seed? So, you know, how far do you want to try to take it into like splitting things up into different seeds? So, I mean, I don't know. For me, I try to think of like each moment of experience is coming from a different seed. So whatever you're really experiencing in that moment is coming from a new seed 59 times per finger snap or something. 52.
65.
65.
Yeah.
65. That sounds right. Any other thoughts?
I love when you said, just with the previous question about how the mental image is like an unchanging thing that comes in and out of existence. And so to me, it married perfectly to the question, because like, it's just like a bunch of those coming in and out at apparently a fast rate, which are creating like the experience of, you know, I love thinking about it. Like, especially when you said it, I connected it to exactly what you said before, was these kind of like fast, unchanging images coming in and out of existence, you know, I guess seeds, if you want to call them. So that's the way I thought about it when you answered the two questions.
I love the movie projector analogy.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's something that really helped me understand karma right when I started hearing about this in the first place. You know, I was like, okay, so if your mind is like projecting out like a movie projector, and then you're also painting the film, you're like putting images on the film as it comes back through.
Yeah.
And then, yeah, each frame is like something new. That's a nice way to think about it. Thanks. Let's see. We've encountered a translation for Chi Chedrak, both general and specific, and quality and characteristic, but with more emphasis on the latter. How might quality help us understand Chi better? Oh boy.
You don't get easy questions.
Yeah, I know. I'm like, okay. Luckily, I was working on this lately, but we'll see if I can help you with what you're asking. So yes, depending on the context, Chi Chedrak is a pretty hard concept to really wrap your mind around. But it also seems like it should be more complicated than it is. Like, I think we want to make it even more complicated than what it already is. So general and specific is one kind of more easy way to understand it. And depending on the context, you know, the type of cheese or qualities that we're talking about, you would talk about Chi Chedrak as general and specific, or quality and characteristic, or set and subset. And there's just kind of increasingly subtle ways to understand it. So set and subset is like cars and Toyota, right? That's the typical example that Geshe Michael gives. Like, a Toyota is a type of car, but a car is not a type of Toyota. So it's a one-way relationship. Like, you have a more, and this is where you can get into calling it general and specific. You can think of things in terms of a more general category, and then a series of more specific categories that fit within that general category. So, set and subset, or general and specific. And cars and Toyota. So car is a general, And everything has to do with how they relate to each other. It's not like car, it just is a general category. It's always a relationship between the two items. So car is a subset of, stuff made of metal. But car is a general when you talk about cars and then different types of cars. So your mind organizes things into categories like that. This is just logically how the human mind constructs the world. And that's partially why this is so helpful to study and to learn. And then you're asking about quality and characteristic. That gets more, using that language can allow you to get more subtle with this discussion. So now you can still apply the translation quality and characteristic to the example of car and Toyota. And you could say that Toyota is a characteristic of the quality car, or something like that. Like Toyota is one specific feature or one specific subset of a car, but quality and characteristic becomes useful when you start talking about a very specific kind of set and subset, which is like you have this general idea car in your mind. It's like a archetype. That means that mental construct or archetype can be applied to specific examples of a car. So you have this very kind of flexible archetype in your mind it's just a label waiting to be placed on something. And then a car drives by, and that's a characteristic, because it's like one example of this more general quality that you have in your mind. So you have like this vast idea of car. You can apply it to that, you can apply it to that, this kind of car, that kind of car, a little kid's car. It's kind of like it can include a lot of different things. So that's where you start getting into the discussion of car and a car or the car. So this is the discussion that Geshe Michael has, and it's probably the simplest and clearest way you could have this discussion, which is one of the great things about Geshe Michael, is how he makes everything understandable. So yeah, when you're talking about quality and characteristic, you start using the word quality specifically, and here I'll wrap this question up, because the function of Chi Chedrak in helping us see emptiness is to understand that the quality car is coming from a seed in your mind, and it's not coming from anywhere else. This quality is something that exists, it's a story that you're putting on to the stuff that you're perceiving. So it's to understand that the carness is 100% the quality. So that's kind of what we're going for here, to understand the difference between car and carness, or a car and carness. So if we can understand it in terms of quality and characteristic, the word quality implies a ness. For those of you who don't speak English as your native language, I'm sorry. I don't know how to, but it's like that quality of being a car is something that exists in the archetype, and that's more of a bigger set that applies to specific instances. Is that helpful to whoever asked the question and the rest of you? Open to feedback. We want to understand that the quality of being something is coming from, it is not in the thing. It's a bigger category that you have in your mind. All right. What is kunshi? I have no idea. That's like, I mean, I'll try to answer it real quick because we just sat through so many hours of talking about it. I think kunshi is another consciousness in addition to your six senses, and another one that the mind only school puts forth in order for various technical reasons, but it's basically like a soul or like a mind stream. It's like some kind of essential part of you that continues from life to life, and it's where the karma lives, and also interestingly where the karma ripens. And then they say that this particular consciousness emanates and makes your world, and it is the thing that you perceive. Like, so the seeds are in the kunshi, the seeds are ripened in the kunshi, and then the kunshi is the world that you experience, basically. So it's all, I mean, that's probably why they're called mind only, or it is why, because they're saying everything is consciousness. It is this consciousness ripening around you. We think it's real, but it's really mind only. And so we're wrong. That's a very simplistic way of putting it. And that's in a nutshell what kunshi is. It's really trippy when you really sit and think about it. It's really like a psychedelic idea, because everything's just constantly it's like your whole world is just this layer of consciousness around you, constantly in flux, and you can't see it.
Yeah.
Right. It dawned on me recently, like just how, in the last couple of years anyway, just how trippy the mind only school is. And I was like, holy crap, like that's amazing.
The whole path is that way.
Yeah, it really is. That's a good point.
We just walked in, we just knocked it out of the park. We just happened to walk into like the coolest situation.
Yeah. It's not like Prasangika is not insane and trippy.
Right.
Amazing. But mind only always seemed so heady to me. And then I just was thinking about it. I was like, nah, these guys were onto something. It is heady too. I'll keep going. I didn't understand Geshe Michael's comment related to the naming of the tradition. Oh, okay, yeah. Oh, you're talking about the left hand thing.
Yeah, you answered. Thank you.
Okay. Enlightened beings are known as conquerors, according to Jason Kappa, because they are possessed of the might of the 8 good qualities. Seventh quality is a mighty ability of creation to display countless worlds and beings to inhabit them. Does it mean that enlightened beings have an ability to create the same world as ours? I don't know. It's like, I just think it's important. I'll just answer this to the best of my understanding of what you're asking. I think it's important for all of us not to think of like Buddhas or enlightened beings as people that create the world or create us or something like that, because that's definitely not the meaning of the Buddhist practice or the teaching. It's not that, like, we were created by Buddha or we're all going back to Buddha. I mean, it is that we're going back to going to maybe not back, but so I don't really know what this I think what the seventh quality is referring to is probably the Nirmanakaya, which is like an ability to emanate infinite things and bodies to help people. So like, and Geshe Michael likes to make the point that it doesn't have to be another person or animal. Like they can emanate as, a breeze or the sound of an ocean wave or something. So I have a feeling that it's talking about their ability to emanate, but I don't know that for sure. And we could sit here and do research, but I think it's better I get back to you on that. Because I can't read Tibetan fast enough to make it worth our time to sit here and like look through the database to figure out the meaning of that. So that's just my guess. Is this talking about their ability to emanate? Anybody know the answer to the definition of the seventh quality of the conquerors? Or the 8 good qualities, the 7th good quality? Create the same world as ours. I think that they can come to our world. They can see, because they're omniscient, they can see that we are in the state that we're in. And so, they can see what we see. And then therefore they want to come help us out if we have good enough karma. So it's just hard to have good enough karma to like interact with a Buddha, maybe. Seems like it would be hard to interact with the Buddha and know it or have a suspicion. That's a really good karma. Sí, es interesante. A mighty ability of creation. That's cool. I'll look it up later. Let's see if we have any questions. Could you say that an archetype is an understanding that can be developed? That's interesting. If you get into the archetypes of thoughts, I haven't thought much about this. I don't know. I feel like Adam's text has been really touching on that lately. Archetype is an understanding that can be developed. Yeah, I mean, they can be. I think archetypes can be expand. Like you can have a new archetype once you have like some kind of new understanding that could give you a new archetype for something, especially when you're getting into the complexity of ideas. I think your archetypes for what is Buddhism, for example, probably can be developed into a new archetype pretty frequently if you're studying a lot. Like my archetype for the mind-only school changed recently, was what I was talking about. But it doesn't change in the sense of gradually shifting. I just have an understanding and then I have a whole different picture of what that means. But I don't really know how to think about archetypes of mental constructs, like an archetype of an archetype or something. I don't know. Maybe Kramer would know that better. You guys can chime in if you have like anything you want to ask or add or comment upon. I'm looking for more questions.
It's funny, they're all like archetype mental image questions.
I know.
Every single one, yeah.
And like I've been struggling through these texts this term. It's hard to get up this early for me.
Brutal.
I can't like rest in life. Here we go. Why does only images that can be verified by clear thinking come true? What is the way in which archetype, luminous images, clear thinking, and real images operate? Whoa. Okay. You guys aren't playing. Uh-oh, Amelie's up. So I'm just gonna open the door and let her come in here and hang out with me. Or you guys can say hi. Hi, boo-boo. Spider-Man. Sorry, bear with me for just a moment. Hey, Emily, you don't have to say hi, but I'm just going to work for another like 15 minutes. Okay, sweetheart? She's the best. If you want to say hi, you can, okay?
Hi, Amelie.
She's really
Hi.
she's she's not ready to say hi yet. She hasn't had her kid coffee. Okay. So first of all, it's not the case that only images that can be verified by clear thinking can come true. That's not the point. Sorry, I have to do one more thing so the dog doesn't wake Aaron. Sorry. Oh, sorry, boo-boo. The responsibilities. Brought this big cactus from Arizona. All right. I can't stall anymore. Images, it's not true that only images that can be verified by clear thinking come true. You may have gotten that idea from DCI Advanced Level 2, but the point is of that level is that if we use clear thinking, if we use, logic to get to a clearer picture of our dream, of the image that we want to bring into reality, then we have a better chance of making it come true soon and more powerful. So that's all. And sometimes it's necessary to use clear thinking to use logic to get to figure out what your goal is. When I put my contribution into that manual, so advanced level 2 is using logic to make your dreams come true, basically. And it has to do with creating a clear image in your mind of your goal. So like for my contribution to that manual, I told a story about having, being a little bit foggy headed about what Erin and I were going to do because we were living in a 2-story apartment and she had like really severe knee issues and we were locked into a lease. So in my mind, I just wasn't dealing with the problem because it just didn't seem like solvable. So, I mean, it was subconscious. I just wasn't dealing with it. And then we had to like use logic to come to some conclusions that, okay, we need to leave this apartment and break the lease, because it's hurting your knee. But I couldn't even begin to get a goal in mind, which would be to find a 1-story place. I couldn't get the goal in mind without using some logic. Like, okay, if we stay here any longer, it's going to damage her knee more. Therefore, we need to leave. If we leave, we have a chance of helping her legs last longer. Something like that. It's more clear in the manual because I had time to write it down. But that's the point of applying clear thinking to your dreams. Let me see the rest. And then when you get, the more clear you can get on it, the more clear you can be in your mind as far as what seeds to plant, how to plant them, and according to what Geshe Michael explained in the manual, just having gone through this exercise of using logic to make the seeds, to make the dream more clear, is going to make it the seeds more powerful when you plant them. That was the kind of purpose of that idea about using clear thinking to make your dreams come true. But everything that you do is going to have a result. So even if you didn't go through a complex process of logical reasoning to come up with your goals, if you want a boyfriend and you go to the nursing home, you're still planting the seeds.
Do you think the extreme situation forced you to get more clear about what you wanted? And then if that's true, like what were the seeds that you guys planted as a result?
Wow, that's a good question. Yes, I think this extreme situation forced me to get more clear. And it's just kind of like personal too. Like for me, like maybe not even everybody has a hard time getting clear on that type of thing. But for me, like it takes a lot. Like if I have an obstacle to wanting to take action about something, it's easy for me to just put blinders on. So sometimes it takes it being like an emergency situation.
Same, yeah.
And then so it helped me to it forced me. Yeah. Yeah, because it's somebody's like health is at stake. And even still, it's hard for me to kind of like force my mind to jumpstart. And then what seeds did we plant? I'm trying, it all happened so fast and it's such a blurry year. I'm trying to,
Yeah.
We did spend some time helping other people to find places. I think it was that. And
I mean, you had that yoga school. I mean, I went and looked at it because I stayed at the hotel next to it.
oh, nice.
And I was like, oh, it was just like how you had started this sort of like thing to help people. And actually, I think someone's still in there.
Yeah, we sold the business.
Yeah. And so it's like this little seed that you had sort of like,
Yeah.
kept going, which is kind of cool.
Super cool. Yeah, and it's helpful just to hear you say that right now because I don't think about it that often because it's sad, you know, it was hard to leave behind.
Well, I'll say too, it's super cool. I just drove by it again the other day myself. So super cool, Nick and Aaron.
So Aaron and I built a yoga studio in Sedona called Village Yoga. So if you're ever over there, you can go take a class there. We don't run it anymore, but all those floorboards I put in myself and all the rest of
I wonder if that contributed in a way, you know, like that out because you had this like this system, which was like an outreach system, which is sort of like this little treadmill of like under karma, which is sort of like, I call it passive like giving or passive karma, which is like you've built a system where it's just automatically taking care of people and it still does. Everything you do does that. This class, the Diamond Cutter Classics, you're like on this constant treadmill of
that's
you set yourself up well.
That's what, if you just hang around Geshe Michael, he'll force you into those situations, you know. But it's funny that you brought that up though, Rob. I'm just gonna say one thing because it's something we did together 12 years ago or whatever, but I feel like everything good that's happened to me since then is just from like building a couple cabins. You know?
Right. Yeah. Right.
I feel like I'm still riding on that.
Yeah. Right. I always have a place to stay.
Nice. Yeah. Somehow we do too. And it's like, and it doesn't seem possible. That's Rob Amelie who's talking.
Hi. Good morning.
Right.
Let's see. I think we have time for one more. Here we go. These are really amazing questions, you guys. So I'm appreciating every one of these questions. This is great. How could we master the contemplation of our actions to create more virtue? How plan a day and set the coffee meditation in the evening that could create the most virtuous results? If you figure this out, I suggest you write a small book and send it to me. This is everybody, I think, has their own discipline, and you really have to develop what works for you. I know that Rob does, and I did for many years. Keep a good 6 times book, and that really helps you because it just gets your mind in the habit of being mindful much of the time. I won't say all the time, but it gets your mind in the habit of being aware of what it's doing because you're just tracking. For some people, it can be hard to be so meticulous, but it never really felt that way to me or feels that way when I still do it, when I can remember to. It's hard. some of this stuff just changes as your life circumstances change. But I personally think that I would benefit a lot from making a schedule of my day every day and sticking to it. And I don't very often, but it's a great thing. I know that Seiji uses this program Asana to like plan out at least his work life minute by minute, and it's amazing. And I want to learn from him how to be so organized. But yeah, I think planning your day. I did this really cool thing. Stanley has a friend who has a company on time management. He's an old Chinese guy, and he's pretty famous in China. And he has a company based on his practices of time management. And I didn't translate it. I was given a translation of the Chinese of the class and recorded the audio of it in English. And I learned so much about how to schedule your life from listening to this guy. He has a really incredible system, but it takes a lot of work and discipline to follow. So start by setting a time for your meditation and just do it each day. Start by setting an intention to do some physical practice every day, and put it on the schedule for every day or as often as you can. And try keeping a book that will help you to stay mindful of the virtuous actions. At the end of the day,
Oh, I can't see.
Sorry, Boo. At the end of the day, I think it all just comes down to really specific little habits, nuts and bolts.
See my mouth.
You can't see because your hair's in your face.
I can't see it.
It just comes down to little things, right? I mean, I think that all of the people who've been practicing. Hold on, give me one more minute.
I can't see still.
You still can't see?
Yeah.
It's because your eyes are closed. You guys think what do you think, Rob?
I mean, the book, which is right. Yeah. I mean, I've been doing it for almost 26 years. Like, yeah, I don't know, it was an easy sell to me. Geshe-la taught the pen, and then he taught, like, when he was teaching the pen, about how it's coming from seeds, he just kind of related that. He threw his arm up and he's like, your own body is the same way. And then if you want a body of Manjushri, then you should do this. So it was like a pretty, it was a long class, but it was an amazing sell to me. I was like, I will do this for the rest of my life until I work this out. So for me, it's like, it works really well. I made it part of my, it's like brushing my teeth, meditation, yoga, do your book, come to classes. Having friends is huge. Dharma friends, I don't do so well the coffee meditation, but as a cheat, I have Post-its everywhere. And so I post those on my wall of like things that I'm kind of like working on. So I'm forcing myself to look at them all the time. So little things like that kind of help. I think what the question about the left-handed way was really good. And my only advice is like, put it into practice right away when Geshe-la teaches it. Otherwise, you just won't do it. Like, you have to try like that day. Yeah. Just have to start doing it. Otherwise, it won't work.
Something I remember that you said to me, many years ago when we were building cabins is like, and you probably don't remember this, but you said when times are good, you got to practice really well because, right now you can. When times are tough, you're not going to want to do anything, and it's really hard to get motivation. So I think when you're happy, I agree, like ride that,
the wave.
Yeah, ride that wave, because then you're going to really create the habit, which I think habit is so important in all this. And like Master Shantideva mentions it again and again in the Bodhisattva's Guide too. It's just like, how do we overcome anger? How do we get joyful effort? It's just make it a habit, and just little by little, your mind will change. So I think it's pretty good advice for everything. It's like, stop looking for some magic cure and just the magic cure is right in your hands. It's just,
Yeah.
you know, putting things into place bit by bit and being patient with yourself.
Yeah. Whenever you say magic, I always think of Venerable Cat.
Where is she? There she is. Hey. I think it's time. So I want to give you guys a break to get ready for yoga, and I got to hang out with this little one. Emily, do you want to say bye-bye?
Bye-bye.
Bye. Oh my gosh.
Bye. You're so beautiful. It's nice to see you.
Bye, Emily.
Thanks for being patient with us, Emily. All right. Well, thank you all. Thank you so much for the questions and the chance to do this with you guys. And I look forward to seeing you later.
Bye. Thanks, Nick.
First,
Thank you. Have a great day.
that I have first.
Okay.